How's it going, guys? It is I, your sadistic spirit guide Yokai Poppy Wolf, back to bring you back another horror story from Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, and this one is titled Harlod. So, let's jump right in and, make sure that this doesn't get way too horrifying. Let's begin. When it got hot in the valley, Thomas and Alfred drove their cows up to a cool green pasture in the mountains to graze. Usually, they stayed there with the cows for 2 months. Then they brought them down to the valley again. The work was easy though, but oh, it was boring. All day, the two men tended their cows. At night, they went back to the tiny hut where they lived. They ate supper and worked in the garden and went to sleep. It was always the same. Then Thomas had an idea that changed everything. "Let's make a doll the size of a man," he said. "It would be so fun to make, and we could put it in the garden to scare the birds." "It should look like Harlod," Alfred said. Harlod was a farmer they both hated. They made the doll out of old sacks stuffed with straw. They gave it a pointy nose like Harlod's and tiny eyes like his. Then they added dark hair and a twisted frown. Of course, they also gave it Harlod's name. Each morning, on their way to the pasture, they tied Harlod to a pole in the garden to scare away the birds. Each night, they brought him inside so they wouldn't get it ruined if it rained. When they were playing full, they would talk to him. One of them might say, "How are the vegetables growing today, Harlod?" Then the other, making believe he was Harlod, would answer in a crazy voice, "Very slowly." They would both laugh, but not Harlod. Whenever something went wrong, they took it out on Harlod. They would curse at him, even kick or punch him. Sometimes, one of them would take the food they were eating, which they were both sick of, and smear it on the doll's face. "How do you like the stew, Harlod?" he would ask. "Well, you better eat it, or else." Then the two men would howl with laughter. One night, after Thomas had wiped Harlod's face with food, Harlod grunted. "Did you hear that?" Alfred asked. "It was Harlod," Thomas said. "I was watching when it happened. I can't believe it." "How could he grunt?" Alfred asked. "He's just a sack of straw. It's not possible." "Well, let's throw him in the fire," Thomas said. "And that will be that." "Let's not do anything stupid," said Alfred. "We don't know what's going on. When we move the cows down, we'll leave him behind. For now, let's just keep an eye on him." They left Harlod sitting in the corner of the hut. They didn't talk to him or take him outside anymore. Now and then the dog grunted, but that was all. After a few days, they decided there was nothing to be afraid of. Maybe a mouse or an insect had gotten inside Harlod and was making those weird noises. So Thomas and Alfred went back to their old ways. Each morning they put on Harlod in the garden, and at night they brought him back in. When they felt playful, they joked with him. When they felt mean, they treated him badly as ever. Then one night, Alfred noticed something that frightened him. "Harlod is growing," he said. "I was thinking the same thing," said Thomas. "Maybe it's just our imagination," Alfred replied. "We've been up here on the mountains for too long." The next morning, while they were eating, Harlod stood up and walked out of the hut. He climbed up on the roof and trotted back and forth like a horse on its hind legs. All day and night, he trotted like that. In the morning, Harlod climbed down and stood in the far corner of the pasture. The men had no idea what he would do next. They were afraid. They decided to take the cows down into the valley the same day, and when they left, Harlod was nowhere in sight. They felt as they needed to escape the great danger and began joking and singing. But when they had gone only a mile or two, they had realized they had forgotten the milking stools. Neither one of them wanted to go back, but the stools would cost a lot to replace. "There really is nothing to be afraid of," they told one another. After all, what could a doll do? They drew straws to see which one would go back. It was Thomas. "I'll catch up with you," he said, and Alfred walked toward the valley. When Alfred came to the rise of the path, he looked back for Thomas, but he did not see him anywhere. But he did see Harlod. The doll was on the roof of the hut again. As Alfred watched, Harlod kneeled and stretched out, a bloody skin to dry in the sun. Hey guys, the story is titled The Voice, and it's also from Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. Let's begin. Ellen just had fallen asleep when she heard a strange voice. "Ellen," it had whispered. "I am coming up the stairs. I'm on the first step. Now I'm on the second step." Ellen got scared and called her parents, but they didn't hear her, and they didn't come. Then the voice whispered, "Ellen, I'm on the top step. Now I'm in the hall. Ellen, I'm outside your room." Then it whispered again, "I'm standing right next to your bed." And then, "I've got you!" Ellen screamed, and the voice stopped. Her father rushed into the room and turned the lights. "Somebody is in here," Ellen said. They looked and looked. Nobody was there.